Hey guys, it's Aiden from Gamers Class. In today's video, I'm going to be continuing my carry climbing guide video, and specifically I'm going to be covering the Crusader bracket to Archon. So first and foremost, before we do get into the video, just a little bit about how I'm going to approach the video. Is what I'm going to be doing here is I've looked over this replay of this Crusader player. I've picked out a couple key points that I think is pretty common thing that I see when I do look at these low MMR replays, and some important tips that if you start paying attention to and make sure that you're not doing them, and also thinking about a lot of the things I'm going to be mentioning, it's going to help you tremendously in climbing out of this bracket. Also, a little bit about myself before we do get into the video, is that the primary role I play is safe lane carry, and the peak MMR I've achieved on safe lane carry is 8,200 MMR. So without further ado, we'll get into the video and we'll get started here.
If you like this kind of content, go to gamersguys.com. For just $10 a month, get your replays analyzed, watch masterclasses with pro players, join weekly coaching sessions, win prizes, and more with our Supreme Dota 2 membership.
So starting the video, my first point here that I want to cover is, so this is like one situation of what I'm talking about here, but when I talk about this, just keep in mind that I'm also talking about a lot of other things that are similar to this, which I will mention, which myself, which I kind of just put them all in the same category, which I just see as bad, and basically they all go into the same category of wasting my time, which is basically what you're doing when you do this, right? So what we see here is this Juggernaut. They got a first blood here on the Undying, and then the Slaughter was like standing around here hitting Skywrath or something, and the Jug kind of runs down. He starts hitting Slaughter a bit. Slaughter starts running away, and as we can see here, the Jug is continue chasing away from the lane, and he's looking to follow this Slaughter. So why is this a problem? Let's think about that for a second. So firstly, the problem is you just killed Undying. You used all your mana to kill that Undying. You have no spells left. The Slaughter is a very tanky boy. He has 6 armor, 920 HP. He's not going to go down easily, especially if you have no forms of lockdown, which currently there is none, right? There's just a slow from Skywrath, which isn't going to do very much. So yeah, so basically the way I see this is you're wasting a lot of time, right? And this goes into like a lot of things in the replays I see, and I'm gonna get started on that now, which is basically like whenever I'm watching these types of replays, I always see these carry players, they're always constantly fighting, they're constantly hitting the enemy like in front of 5 creeps and getting hit by 5 creeps as well, and they're just always fighting. They want to fight as much as possible. From the first minute of the game, they're just looking to fight. And why is this a problem? Well, the problem with that is, as a carry player, basically your role is to get items and carry the game, right? And if you're spending the first 10 minutes of the game constantly fighting a hero like Slaughter, or there's many a lot of similar offlane heroes to Slaughter, like pretty much all of them do the same. There's like the strength ones, at least they're strength heroes. They have some spells that are annoying, they do some damage, and they pretty much are there to just mess with you, right? And deal damage to you and just constantly stop you from hitting creeps. And if you're just constantly hitting this guy and not hitting creeps, or if you're just constantly chasing this guy into the woods and you're not hitting creeps, you're gonna have really bad timings, right? And that's ultimately what we're looking to get as a carry player. All we're looking to do from the laning stage on the most basic level, we're looking to get last hits, and we're looking to get a good amount of XP at a good timing, right? We don't want to have like we don't want to have low, like 2k net worth at minute 10. We don't want to be level 5 at at minute 10. We want to be like around level 8. We want to have a good amount of net worth, preferably above 4k, ideally above 5k, around the 10-minute mark. And we want to be like well on our way to that first item. So a lot of the time as a carry, like your first item is gonna like dictate how you're gonna play the game, right? So in this game, like Jug is a good example, because this is a hero that actually can go like pretty quite a few different builds. Like you have the option to go more like tempo builds, like Yasha into Manta. You have the option to go Battle Fury and just farm and try scale. And these options pretty much all depend on the game, right? So the main point here though is, like, when you're going into games, every game you need to have a little idea of what you want out of that lane, and this is going to depend on your lane, but firstly what I want you to focus on is just the bare basics. Just try to get as many last hits as possible and try to get as much levels as possible, and anything that's gonna mean that you're gonna be getting way less levels or way less last hits, avoid doing that. And this is a great example of that, right? Another great example of like this is like just constantly running at the enemy and hitting them when you're not that far ahead and there's creeps being hit, right? Kind of like what's happening here. You're running after the slaughter, there's a bunch of creeps here that are just dying, and you're ultimately just missing a bunch of last hits for pretty much no reason, right? And we've already established there's no way this guy is dying. He can easily just TP out. And the other big problem with this, as you see as I resume the gameplay here, while this is happening, there's a wave running in, these creeps are dying, so he's missing last hits. He's missing a bunch of last hits here, and the other thing he's missing is they're also missing this pool, which would have been uncontested because they killed the Undying, right? So you're missing a very big opportunity, while also missing a lot of last hits. And pulling is something that is also very neglected in these lower ranks, especially Crusader around here. A lot of the time as a carry player, you're gonna even be just pulling the lanes. Like there's so many games where I play where I'm just pulling this big camp to the wave, and in the lower ranks especially, you're gonna have to start to learn how to do this yourself, because a lot of the time your support won't be doing it because they're in this rank for a reason, right? They don't do these things, neither do the enemies. And if you start doing these things, you're gonna be getting out of this bracket really, really fast. So this is my first point, and the overall thing I'd say on this first point is just try to avoid situations which are going to result in you getting little value out of it and missing a lot, right? So that includes constantly fighting, constantly using your spells, even when you're kind of on even footing in the lane. The only time you really want to push aggression in a lane is either if you've got a substantial net worth lead, you've spent that net worth and you have the items in your inventory, or if you, let's say you get level 2 before the enemy, or you get level 3 before the enemy and you're a Jug, so you get a second level on that Blade Fury, and in turn it gives you a lot more damage, right? These are the kind of reasons we're looking to play aggressive. Other than that, all we're looking to do, get as many last hits as possible and get as many pulls off as possible, and we're happy as can be. The more we do that in these early parts of the lane, the stronger we're going to be in the next 4 minutes, which is going to in turn allow us to dominate the enemy a lot harder in the lane. So yeah, that's going to be my first point, guys, and shortly going to be moving on to the next one here. Okay, so moving on to the next point here in the replay, and this is something I'm pretty sure I've spoken about in both of the other videos I've made, but it's just that important, and I just see it in every all of these low ranks. I just see these problems all the time, and I just want to reiterate on that and make sure that you guys have a decent idea of what you should start doing. So here, what I want to just highlight here is the item board, right? We see that we're playing Jug here, and we're kind of going this very like weird item build, right? It's just like this weird rush into drums. We kind of bought a boots on the way there. We bought a wraith band as well, but for the most part, it's just looking like not very good, right? We're playing against Undying Slaughter lane. We do not have a stick against Undying. Like, this is a huge problem. It's 9 minutes into the game. We haven't upgraded our boots yet. This is another problem. We're going to be scaling very badly. That's a tip in itself, something that I think is like in this specific meta. This is like a specific meta tip in this current meta. Early treads, early phase boots on a lot of heroes is really, really good. Like pretty much every game I'm buying one wraith band, and then I'm buying my treads, and then or I'm buying my phase boots depending on the game. How you want to choose these items, basically treads, you want to buy this if you want to be as efficient as possible and you want to farm as fast as possible in that game. And then phase boots, if you feel like this, you buy this item basically when you feel like you can get at a really good timing, let's say like minute 5 in the lane, or like even earlier, or even minute 6, it's fine as well. As long as you're getting this before the enemy is getting it, you get this item early in the lane and you just start running at the enemy and hitting them and bullying them out of the lane, and it's very hard for them to do anything. So basically my point here is you need to start thinking about your items in the lane and throughout the rest of the game. And something that I would heavily suggest, especially when you're at these lower ranks, because it can be very overwhelming. As you've seen in a lot of my videos, there's a lot of things you need to be thinking about in Dota games. So what I do suggest at these lower levels is just make your life a little bit easier. Go onto Dota Buff, or go onto Dota 2 Pro Tracker, look at some high MMR or pro players item builds on the hero that you're playing, and just like replicate that, or just keep your item build in line with what they do generally, right? Try not to deviate too much from those builds. It's just gonna make your life a lot easier, and you'll see that when you start improving your like basic understanding of the game and your mechanics, which is ultimately what you do need to do at this rank, you're gonna naturally just start getting better at that, and you won't need to really do that anymore. But even myself, even at the MMR I'm at right now, in the higher MMRs, I'm still looking at builds that pro players do. I still look at builds that other high MMR players do, and I still kind of like follow that, right? I'm sure there are a lot of people that like to do their own stuff, try to do unique stuff, which is super cool. But when your rank is like low, like around Crusader and around Archon and there, just try follow some higher MMR players builds, and it's just going to make your life a lot easier. And what I said before as well about just your item decisioning, it's so important in the lane. So much of your laning comes down to the items you build and also the way you play because of those items. Like in a lot of like a very popular trend you'll see in this current meta as well is kind of this meta where carries always buying Ring of Regens to just sustain through the lane. They just abuse this Ring of Regen low cost and the armor and the regen you get from your tower, and they just start the lane with one tangos, and you'll see they don't even buy another set of tangos or another set of regen the whole lane. They literally just buy one ring of regen, they farm by their tower a lot, and they just get out of the lane so rich because they've spent zero money on consumables. So like this is a good example of that, right? Your item decisioning in the lane is just so important to how well your lane goes. When you're playing against heroes like Undying, when you're playing against heroes like Bad Rider, when you're playing against heroes like Bristleback, buy a stick. It's super important. If you feel like you don't need the stick, what I like, the main item things you're always going to be going. If you're an agility carry, you're going to be going Wraith Band most of the time. If you're a strength carry, you're going to be getting a Bracer, and then you're going to just go into your boots as soon as possible if you're not going for the stick. So you're going to go for those treads, you're going to go for those phase boots, whatever you think is best. And then you're going to be, after that, you're going to be moving into like your actual first item of the game. And you can see if you just start doing these item builds correctly, you're going to get such good time ins, especially if you can pair that with decent laning and do it with some of the other tips that I mentioned. So that's going to be the second tip, guys, and moving on to the next part here. Okay guys, so moving on to the third part of the video here, and this is something again I've mentioned many times before. It's something that's just so important as a carry player. It's just one of those things that needs to be said over and over again. Stop trying to force staying in a lane for super long as a carry player. If you watch a lot of like carry replays and like high MMR carry players, you'll notice that most games they're not staying in the bottom lane past like minute 8 or minute 9. If we watch this particular replay, you'll see here from literally like I said, firstly it's fighting the first 1 minute to 10 minutes, and then from 10 minutes to 20 minutes it's staying bottom and just fighting whoever throws themselves at you bottom. Something that you're going to notice when you do start getting higher MMR and climbing into higher ranks, the higher it goes, the better people are going to be at this, is safe lane is the place to be around 10 minutes to 20 minutes. That's where the pos 5s want to run at you. That's where the enemy mid wants to run at you if they're a hero that likes to get runes and run at places. A lot of the time the enemy offlane is going to TP there, the enemy carry is going to TP to your lane, and then they're going to try like gank you with their offlaner, and they're going to try to take your tower. This is just like some of the most common movement you'll see in pretty much every game in Dota if you're watching like higher skill games, right? And this is something, if you start doing at this rank, you're gonna like have a breeze getting through it. And that's, stop trying to stay in your lane too long. What you should be looking to do in most situations. So firstly, I'm going to mention the situations where it's okay to stay in the bottom lane. So when you do want to stay in your bottom lane, these are the kind of criteria you're going to be looking to have. Firstly, you're going to want to have won your lane pretty hard to the point where the enemy offlaner can't annoy you at all, pretty much. They just don't really do anything to you in the lane. You can just sit there and free farm as much as you want, and they can't do anything about it. The other thing as well is you need to make sure you're paying attention to what other heroes on the map are doing, because like I said, this is a time when people are going to look to gank you. Preferably you're going to want to ward as well. And in those cases, when you've won your lane, you have a ward, the enemies are pretty far behind, it's very hard for them to make a rotation, that's when it's okay to stay in your safe lane. And in those situations, you generally also want to be looking to push your advantage and take that tower if you're strong enough. The other situation that's going to happen is you're going to stay bottom, and you feel like the enemy offlaner can kind of annoy you, but they can't really kill you, or they don't have insanely good kill potential on you. So in those sort of situations, you're generally just looking to shove in the lane as much as possible, like as soon as you can. Send in that lane so the offlane is forced to stay bottom and defend that tower, and make sure he can't go to your mid and just wreak havoc on other lanes. So that's the first thing. You want to make sure you're keeping that offlaner there. And then in the meantime, once you've shoved that in, you're going to be hitting jungle creeps and pushing that in, right? A lot of the time, some other things you're going to be looking to do as well, and this can kind of just come off like feel as well, but a lot of the time, if you're playing against like really annoying heroes like Slaughter and Undying, for example, and you're relatively behind. So we see this game relatively behind on this jug. Firstly, the item build is a huge problem, so I have to mention that, but just to like keep that in mind as well. But you kind of don't want to stay in this lane anymore, right? What is like, because this guy's just going to be hitting you with these Bash of the Deeps constantly. You're super low XP because your Skyreth hasn't pulled at all, you haven't pulled at all, and you've just shared XP, so your level is very sad. Level 7 and minute 10, not ideal for a safe lane hero. Like, you should have a lot more levels because your support pulls a lot, or you just pull if your support doesn't pull, right? So what you're kind of looking to do a lot of the time here is you're always looking towards this mid lane and you're looking towards this top lane. Primarily it's when you do have spells available. When you don't have spells available, what you're going to be looking to do, especially in lanes like this, either you're shoving in the lane and you're jungling, or if you feel like you're too weak to even shove in the lane, then you're just going to be jungling, right? But the way you want to jungle is you want to jungle. So let's say you started jungling like now, right? You start jungling from here, you move here, and then you want to start moving towards the next lane that you want to try pressure. So these movements are going to be coupled with timings of catapults or timing of your spells. Whatever allows you to kill heroes or kill towers is pretty much what makes you what allows you to make these moves. So don't stay in your lane too long. Look for other lanes to move to if the lane is too dangerous. Play off the catapult timings. Move to lane, like for example, like starting jungling at minute 9 and then moving towards this top triangle so that you're farming this at 9:45, and then at minute 10 the catapult spawns and it's going to push down the lane, and then you're going to be looked to go just hit this anti-mage, force him out the lane, and just go take this tower with the catapult, right? Or if you didn't do that before, and you can also just use your TP top and just go kill the tower with the catapult. Any of these type of moves are great things to do at this part of the game. Generally, you don't want to be sat AFK in this lane anymore, especially if you're suffering on levels and farms. A lot of the time you're going to want to start just getting that solo XP, moving to the jungle, moving to other lanes and things like that. So very, very important thing to keep in mind here. And this applies to a lot of ranks as well. Even at very high ranks, I see this all the time. So it's a very important thing to keep in mind. And yeah, so we'll move on here. Okay, so moving on to the next part of the video here. My fourth point is basically for the first point. This is 2 points pretty much that I'm covering here, but the first thing I want you to think about is, again, linking to that last point I mentioned, right? So the third point I just mentioned was you want to look to move out of your safe lane at a certain time, and you want to look to go top, take this tower, or you want to look to go mid and take this tower, right? So commonly what you want to do as a carry is you want to be farming in the enemy's jungle, okay? Like, this is like a lot of the time what you're just looking to do. Why do you want to farm in the enemy's jungle and not your jungle? Because the enemy's jungle is on their side of the map, so whenever you shove in the lane here, you're just doing a lot more, right? If you're shoving in the lane bottom, you're shoving it into like a not so safe area. Like, it's very hard for you to fight in this area, whereas this area, if you have done a couple of things, this area is pretty safe to play in. The other nice thing about controlling the enemy's jungle and farming here is you're constantly able to shove in this lane, put pressure here so people have to TP, and you always got the option of going to rush because you're very close to rush. It's also just in general like way better to play on the side of the map. So what are the 2 things we need to be able to play there? Firstly, it's vision, okay? So we want to, pretty much every game, we want to be farming around our vision as a carry player. In some situations, if you're playing like Spectre, you might be farming the other part of the map like solo because you have Haunt to join fights, right? But even in those cases, a lot of the time, if enemies are missing and stuff, you just want to farm under your vision. You want to farm under your vision, and farming under your vision allows you to do a lot of things. It allows you to play a lot more aggressively on waves. It allows you to push in waves a lot more. It allows you to clear all the camps because you're not always thinking about where the enemies are. You have a much better chance of surviving if people do try gank you as well, because you can always see it coming, right? And if they're smoking, it's very obvious because no one's showing on the map and you're shoving in the lane, so it's very obvious because your creeps are hitting their tower. So kind of linking with that point is that, right? You want to farm on your vision as much as possible. As a carry player, most of the time you are going to be farming in the enemy's jungle. And basically, this kind of links with the early point, like I said, right? That's why you also want to take this tower early, like around the 10-minute mark, is because then when it comes to... Because once you do that, you're basically securing yourself an area to farm, right? From that minute 10 to 20, you literally just play in this top area. You took this tower, your support placed a ward here, and then you have a super safe free area to play in, right? So that's one of the things. Is also another thing try not to do is avoid playing in this area. Like, just avoid playing in your safe lane by their triangle area. If you don't have vision here and it's not late into the game where you're super strong and super far ahead, it's extremely hard to fight in this area and contest this area. You really have to be a lot stronger than the enemy to take over the triangle and just occupy this area. It's just very hard. So just keep that in mind. And we'll also move on to the main thing I wanted to talk about here, and this is try not to get like baited into bad fights after kills. Like, don't get baited into fights, and I'll show you my point here. So we see here, good catch by Invoker. It is a little bit risky. Like I said, this is a bad area to take a fight in. All the enemies are missing. This is not the best idea, but it's still a nice catch on Tinker, so this can work out. Okay, we get the kill on the Tinker, and then the Sundian shows up and he drops his tomb. Okay, we still have quite a bit left on our Blade Fury. We see top, we have 3 heroes top showing in plain vision. So we know this. We should know that the enemy knows this. So we should be very aware that the enemy are gonna try their best to fight us right now, because they know we're max 2 heroes, right? Because 3 of our heroes are showing. So when things like this happen and you know you're outnumbered in fights, let's say you just got a pick off on the enemy side of the map, but you're only 2 heroes or whatever, the first thing you need to do after you get this kill is you need to get out. And this is what I mean. Like, do not get baited into taking this fight just because you got this kill or just because your Invoker died. Getting this kill was super good, but you still had the opportunity to just immediately get out. So don't be afraid to cut your losses in team fights. This applies to team fights as well. If you start a team fight and it like starts well, you get a kill or 2 on a core hero, but then it immediately starts going bad and you've used all your spells and you have no damage left, don't be afraid to just back off, TP out and farm the other part of the map and start shoving out those lanes. Do not just concede your death for no reason, right? If the fight is starting to look bad, stop taking the fight and get out. And this applies to everything: ganking, team fights, Roshan fights. If it looks unwinnable, it probably is. And like, let's say your Invoker and your Bristleback just die in the team fight. You killed their anti-mage, but 4 of them are alive. Just get out. Don't just concede a death for no reason. And this like kind of applies to every part of the thing. So don't get baited into taking bad fights like these linked to pickoffs and bad positioning. And secondly, don't be afraid to just cut your losses, especially as a carry player. This is the most important role, to pretty much be selfish like this. Like, it's not selfish though. Like, if the fight is already lost, it's lost. Don't just die for the cause as a carry player. You're not allowed to. You have to stay alive and you have to get 6 items and win the game. So yeah, that's going to be my 4th point, guys, and I'll be moving on to the next one here. Okay guys, so moving on to the final point of the video here. Another thing I just want to cover, this is slightly this is also part of the point that I just mentioned, but I'm gonna go a little bit more in depth on it here and just reiterate why it's really bad and kind of just the way you want to be playing the map in the mid to late-ish game. Some of the things you want to have high priority on. Okay, so at this point of the game, we see we're all bottom. So what's happened in this game basically is this Jug has been playing bottom since the start of the game till 26 minutes, right? From minute 1 to minute 26, Jug has been playing in the safe lane and he's been playing here the whole time. Okay, and why is this a problem? So I mentioned it already earlier. It's a problem because the triangle is really hard to take if you're not far ahead and you're a lot stronger than the enemy. In this case, they are far ahead. That's not too bad, right? It's still fine. Like, they have a good hold on the game, and it's not too bad to fight here right now in this certain situation. But in general, what I want you to just keep in mind is just always have a very high like priority of rush, especially at this point in the game. Like, the problem I'm seeing here, and the problem I see in a lot of games, is this Roshan is just neglected so much in so many of these games. Like, if you watch this game from the start to the finish, past around like 22 minutes, the Radiant team starts to take a pretty sizable lead. It's very hard for the enemy to fight them because they have a Tinker and an Anti-Mage, 2 heroes that do nothing until they have a lot of items. And it's in general, it's just very hard for them to take fights. Okay, so like in games like these, Roshan is just a huge part of closing out the game and getting like that next part of the advantage. My biggest point here is just like you need to have a bigger priority on taking these huge objectives like Roshan, right? And you want to avoid like forcing your team to play in this area, in the bottom area specifically, before you've taken Roshan, before you've taken top tower, before you've taken mid tower. Like you really don't want to be playing this area this early in the game. Why don't you want to be playing here? Because of Roshan, right? The problem is they have Slaughter, they have Anti-Mage, they have heroes that can kill Roshan very fast. If these guys are smart, they will realize that you've committed everything to bottom and they will just go kill Roshan real quick with a smoke. You'll have no idea because you'll place all your vision on the opposite part of the map of Roshan. And you may say to me, but I'm playing carry. Why is it my fault that my wards are bottom in the triangle? And it's your fault because you've played here from minute 1 till minute 26, and even if your supports are 1k MMR, this is just a natural thing people are gonna do. They're just gonna, like, at least normal people, they're just gonna place your wards. Like some people might just place your wards here, but if you're playing real games, they're just naturally gonna start placing their wards like on you and around you and where you play. So like it has a lot to, because the reason why they do that also is because if a support just runs into here now to get vision down because they want you to play here because they recognize that you need to get rush, they're just gonna die, right? Because you're not there. You're the strong guy that kills everyone and makes the enemy scared. Does Disrupt to make anyone scared with his Void Stone and his energy booster? Nope, he just runs up and he dies in one shot from Anti-Mage. So it's important to recognize that where you play as a carry often dictates where your teammates play as well. And you always want to make sure that you're pitting your team in the right positions to win games. So that means when Rush is alive and you're ahead, you want to control the top area. You want to take Rush, then you want to take their tier 2's top, and then you want to take the tier 2 mid, and the last step is then to take this bottom area. This is just the most logical way to like move the map, right? So you don't need to think about it that like super in a super complex way. But the most important thing is you just start thinking about it. You just start realizing that where you play as a carry is where your teammates are going to play a lot of the time. Like if you're the strongest hero on the map, they're going to do what you want to do. Even if you feel like they don't, they're doing what you want to do. They can only, rarely, they cannot fight without you. And if they do, then it's kind of unfortunate and they're just going to die and you're probably going to lose the game. And that happens in a lot of games. But this is just something to keep in mind, okay? Make sure you're playing in the right areas of the game to win the game. Make sure you're getting these important these objectives like Roshan, so that you can start to take those towers and get that map advantage that you actually need to win the game. And in hold and in general, just start to think about more about like where you need to play on the map to win games. Most of the time it's just going to revolve around rush in the mid game and the late game, and a lot of it's going to revolve around playing on your vision and taking fights under your vision. This is some also super important stuff to keep in mind. So yeah, that's going to be my last point of the video, guys. Thanks for watching the video. This was my top tips for Crusader to Archon. Obviously not exclusive to, these tips are just in general pretty good for carry players as well. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in my next video, which will be Archon to, I believe, Legend. Yeah, Archon to Legend. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.